Hey folks, it's Marvin Cash, the host of the Articulate Fly, and we're back with another Southwest Virginia fishing report with Matt Reilly. How you doing, Matt?
I'm doing good, Marvin.
Well, that's great. So I took a quick look at your weather, and kind of what we're finding out here in the Mid-Atlantic is, how much hurricane rain are we going to get, and what's it going to do to the fishing?
Yeah, that is the question. Working on some post-float trip stakes outside on the patio right now, and it's been pretty cloudy all day, but it's definitely, it's cleared up the last couple hours, but still they're calling for anywhere, depending on where you are in the region, anywhere between an inch and 2.5 inches of rain in the next 2 days or so, starting tomorrow and going through Thursday. So we will see. Things are, the rivers are in good shape right now. So if we get that much, even an inch will probably put us over. But we'll see what happens.
Got it. So, assuming we don't get blown out, I would imagine, your trout fishing is looking good, your smallmouth bite is slowing down, and you're getting ready to transition to seriously chase muskie. Yeah.
Seriously being the key word. We've been out a lot recently, pretty much every free day that I've had. I've just been out scouting and getting back into the swing of things. And, the muskie game's kind of tough this early in the season for, they're in transition and water conditions that generally prevail this time of year make it difficult. But there's plenty to do. I mean, that's kind of the curse of the month of October. My car is packed because, 2 days ago we were trout fishing in the mountains, and yesterday we were smallmouth fishing, and today we were muskie fishing. Trout fishing's been great. The creeks are all in good shape, but they're full of leaves like they always are this time of year. Certainly if we get a lot of heavy rain, it'll probably pull down even more leaves. So, kind of a double-edged sword. On one hand, higher flows will flush the system out, but that heavy rain likes to bring down dying leaves too. So, we'll see how it evens out once we get what we get. But the smallmouth fishing's been pretty good. Kind of like in the spring, this late in the year, kind of chasing conditions. Last day we were on the river, we found high 60, 65, 66 degree water temps in the afternoon. And if you could splat it down in between a patch of leaves, we're catching a few fish on top water. But, through the cooler hours of the day, it's mainly streamer fishing, mainly fishing some heavier lines now, sink tips and intermediates, depending on what the depth of the water is and all that. And then, once this rain comes through, it's supposed to stay warm until it's done raining. And then Friday or Saturday, it's supposed to get cold, probably for good at this point. I saw some high 20s and low 30s in our forecast for the next for the weekend and thereafter. So things are fixing to change for sure.
Very, very good. And we have a question from Nick, and it kind of relates to the muskie stuff you were just talking about. He wanted to get your thoughts on kind of what the fall muskie pattern looks like, and what does it look like when it transitions into the winter muskie pattern.
Yeah, so that's a good question because it does relate to what we're seeing right now. It's I like to think of the river as smallmouth are the exact same way. Once you start dipping below 60 degrees consistently during the day, those are water temps, the whole river starts to transition. Fish abandon the spots they were in the summer, and they're moving towards their winter spots. And so that is the pattern. And that pattern is that there is no pattern. They're, moving from point A to point B. If your river has, very specific, some rivers have, with respect to muskie, have very specific, summer refuge areas, and then very specific winter holes. If you know that intimately, you can kind of target, transitional routes in between those two areas, just like you might in the spring for smallmouth between winter areas and spawning areas. But yeah, the pattern right now is that they are everywhere, but nowhere at the same time. So if like the last couple of days, muskie fishing, we are doing more of a point A to point B float than I will in the wintertime for sure. So, you're fishing all the spots, fishing the sort of what I consider to be resting water, eddies below rapids and tail outs and big pools. And then, the classic muskie habitat, the deeper pools and creek mouths and, good structure filled bottom areas, that kind of thing. But there really is there's never any predicting muskie, but there really is no predicting right now. And, so if you do have some muskie experience, if you've caught a couple of fish on the sections of river that you fish, just understand that if you caught those fish in January or February, they may or may not be in the same places now. Certainly, if you catch a fish in, a foot or two of water in October, that fish is not hanging around. He's going to be come that 50-degree mark, once everything settles down, as things are transitioning, like you'll notice if you're out floating every day in the month of October, early November, you'll start out early part of the month, you're seeing bait fish running around, smallmouth swimming around and jumping, all that kind of thing. Once you get into November, generally things start to look dead. You're not really seeing fish. Life just seems to have disappeared, and a lot of that is just because those fish have sort of packed into these deeper structure-filled winter holes. So come that 50-degree mark, should, probably be like mid to late November. That's where those fish are going to be. And that's why I tend to spend most of my time muskie fishing in that late November to March time frame, because they are as condensed as they're going to be. They're in predictable locations, and there's a certain amount of competition that goes into surviving in a winter hole with a bunch of other muskie around, because, well, anytime you get a bunch of fish in one area, particularly big fish, they're going to be competing for food. So it's that's your best case scenario. October, early November can be a great time muskie fishing, but honestly, your goal is to cover water, and fly rod is not the best tool for covering water in that respect. So that's sort of what is going on and what will be happening in the next month or so. So if you're going out and not catching fish now, particularly with flies, just know that it will get easier if you know where to look and know what you're doing. And the other thing about fall, like right now, before we get all this rain, is we are very clear. We have very clear water. So, it just makes getting fish to eat difficult, particularly if you have these high sky fall days like we've had the last week or so. A little bit of color in the water, which comes naturally in the wintertime when it turns that kind of cloudy green, blue color. It's really helpful. And, that time of year, you might not see as many fish. I mean, clear water is really good for seeing fish, but not so good for catching them. So, like I said, that's what's happening now and what will change in the next month or so.
Well, that's awesome. Thanks, Matt. And, folks, we love questions at the Articulate Fly. You can email them to us or send them to us on our Facebook or Instagram page. if we read your question, I'll send you some articulate fly swag, and you'll get into a drawing for something cool from Matt at the end of the season. And, like we always do when we get together, Matt, you got to tell me what you're writing for the Rural Virginian.
Yeah, man. This week I'm putting together an article, sort of talking about the rules, the state regulations as it pertains to what some people refer to as a cast and blast. Fall and winter, I get to spend more time fishing than I do the rest of the year, and I also like to hunt. I like to shoot squirrels. I like to shoot geese and ducks and have wild game in the freezer. And sometimes the monotony of muskie fishing in the wintertime pairs perfectly with putting some meat in the freezer. But there are some things you need to know about where you can do that and what the rules are and everything for that. So that's what I'm looking into this week, and it will be out next week. But I think we'll put it in the show notes at some point so people can see it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And, before I let you hop, why don't you let folks know where to find you so they can book you and do some muskie fishing with you this winter?
Sure. Yeah, the website is mattreillyflyfishing.com, and all my contact info, my email, phone number, everything is on there. So reach out however you feel comfortable.
Well, that's great. Well, listen, folks, it's a great time of the year to get out and catch a few because, if you don't muskie fish, you're going to be sitting at home in January and February wishing you'd been fishing more in October and November. All right. Tight lines, everybody. Tight lines, Matt.
All right. Thanks, Marvin.